pleased to introduce these two gentlemen that will be part of our first session here this morning. As you can see from the PowerPoint on the screen, estate planning, transformational plan giving. And this session will include strategies for the lawyer and professional advisor to assist clients and donors with the structuring of their philanthropic and estate planning goals, as well as some ideas and strategies for endowments, foundations to attract donors and expand their plan giving opportunities. I'd like to introduce first Kameron Brooks. He's a partner at Brooks & Brooks, LLP, graduate of SUNY at Fredonia and Western New England College School of Law. He has practiced in estate planning, estate administration, and tax fields for over 38 years. He's a past instructor of paralegal courses at Jamestown Community College, and he's lectured extensively in estate planning topics for the New York State Bar Association. Joining him this morning is Jeffrey Evans. He joined Northwest in January of 2014 as a result of his firm, Evans Capital Management, being acquired by Northwest. He brings over 35 years of wealth management, financial planning experience to the firm, and as a senior financial advisor, Mr. Evans is responsible for managing relationships with investment clients as well as developing financial plans for high net worth individuals. He's involved in all aspects of the firm, but has been particularly prominent in the areas of insurance, business succession planning, and charitable giving. He's written many articles for publication. He received his Bachelor's of Arts degree in marketing from Gannon University and holds a certified financial planner practitioner designation. So we want to welcome Mr. Evans first. He'll be our first presenter.
Good morning, everybody. You see the word that's up there first, transformational. Now that's a new word that was created for this. What happens a lot when we talk about charitable giving, it's a lot of book kinds of things. What's a charitable remainder trust? What's a charitable unit trust? What's this? What's that? So what we're going to talk about this morning is bringing it down to levels that we can create ideas in our donor's mind about what actually they can do, real-world examples. So whenever I attend a conference, I always hope that when I leave, I've been able to gain at least one idea that I can take with me that I can put back into practice in my own operations. So I know in this audience we have attorneys, we have business owners, and how many development people do we have in the audience? I know Marion was here. A development person at a charitable organization has probably the most difficult job because they have a mission to bring in money now, whereas at the same time you want to also look towards the continuing viability of the organization. So there's a great deal of pressure to bring money in the door. And many times that's difficult to do with what I would call checkbook giving. In the beginning of the year, you normally have a list of donors. They may be a good list, it could be a fuzzy list. You might have a couple things going, but the pressure to bring in money is always imminent. At the same time, you're trying to really do all of the things to run the organization, so it makes for a difficult situation. So the first part of what I want to go over today is really to give you an idea, and the theme is what goes on within the donor's mind. So for those of you here who are business owners who have given or haven't given or are thinking about giving, I'm going to present some transformational ideas that you can think about. The problem that a development officer has is they never get a chance to take a look and ask their donor Let me see what you own. Make a list of all your assets for me so I can take a look at them, so I can give you some ideas as to how you can make some charitable gifts to me without really affecting your personal pocketbook. Now, if I can show you a few ways to be able to do that, would you be willing to spend a couple minutes to learn how? These are the kinds of questions that we try and create within our donors' minds that's very difficult for the development officer to initiate, because if you initiate that kind of a conversation, you also have to have the knowledge of all of the tools and techniques that can work within that conversation. So for the attorneys that are here, you're a very, very important part of all of what's known as charitable giving, because you have the opportunity to really zero in with the donor. You're talking to the donor all the time. You're developing the wills, the trusts. You're talking about family situations. So if you have somebody that has charitable intent, the donor and the attorney, very critical. But somebody has to initiate the entire conversation. So we're going to talk about in the first part the relationship between donors and philanthropic intent. So it's creating ideas. How to bring in money now to your organization, how to bring in money now as well as in the future, and thirdly, thinking about the future, because it's money today, but you need it on an ongoing basis. So over the last 30, 35 years, I have served on a good number of nonprofit boards. I know Tom Topitz is here from Knox Law Firm, who's done an enormous amount in that area. But being on the board, and the fact that I've been involved in charitable giving, I have seen an awful lot that's happened. I have learned a lot, and I have been disappointed a lot in what takes place. So my whole intention is to give you some ideas about what we call our ACD system. Activate the donor, create the interest, develop the idea. So, you want more of these in your organization? There's a strategy behind this check. All organizations look for these kinds of checks. So at the back end of my presentation, I'm going to give you a very interesting story about this check. I got some noise here, so it keeps everybody awake as I move along. So what I'm going to talk about here are hurdles and opportunities. ATRA of 2012 increased everybody's tax rates. Does anybody here think that income taxes are going to stay the same or go down in the future? No hand would go up to that question. There's increased tax rates for capital gains. There is the extended tax benefits of IRA charitable rollovers. And I put up there, made permanent, the estate gift and generation skipping transfer tax rates and exemption amounts. Maybe. I mean, there's an awful lot of discussion on that with regards to the current political environment that we have. And also remember, there's a 3.8% surtax under the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So the top income tax rates for those making over $415,000 now up to 39.6%. And when you add the 3.8% to that, 43.4%. Now, for all of you who are as young as I am, going back to the 70s and so forth, remember tax rates 60, 65, 70%. There was also an awful lot of depreciation credits and investment tax credits and everything else that went along with it that brought everybody's rates down. We don't have that today. I mean, these are numbers that are here, and they're going to continue to go up. But it also provides increased incentive for charitable giving. So the top rate for capital gains and qualified dividends is higher. For individuals making $200,000 and families making over $250,000, it's 18.8%, plus 15%, 3% surtax. Charitable gifts and stocks and other appreciated property avoid capital gains tax, and so forth and so on. I know Kameron's going to talk a little bit about that. I've got 40 minutes to get a whole lot of 2 hours worth of ideas in, but I'll do it. So what we're looking at today within a charitable situation is what's called the future gets closer with every single day. A huge concern for every charitable organization is that many of today's important donors are soon going to be gone. And the second and third generation is not quite as giving. I'm sure many of you notice that in the world that you live in today. That's exactly what's happened. Somebody that inherits a business. You know, I only inherited it. Why does everybody say I have to work so hard? A lot of that is taking place. And the other thing that you have to remember is that the people who are living here today may be gone. They may be moving elsewhere. And so once the people leave, the money leaves at the same time. So there's different roadblocks that if I'm a development person that I need to be aware of. These roadblocks, really, the attorney has an opportunity to turn into ideas, though. As I said, the development person really never gets a chance to take a look at what the donor has. There's a lot of good ideas about life insurance and annuities that are directly connected to charitable giving. And I have seen on boards, I've been on these kinds of boards, where somebody says, I've got a great idea, let me present it. They never get a chance to present it because somebody might make a sale. Everything today is a sale. Whether you sell insurance, whether you sell an automobile, or whether you sell a charitable gift. So there's a lot of ideas that never even saw the light of day. I've seen other situations where somebody has brought a tremendous idea to the board, the charitable board, and somebody says, well, wait a minute here, I have a friend that could do the same thing. Or somebody on the board said, hey, what about me? All of a sudden, nothing got done at all. It just got washed to the side. So the roadblocks that are there have to be addressed. And I'm going to give you ideas on life insurance and annuities that's going to make the road a little bit simpler. So let's take a couple minutes to talk about who donors are and what are they about. Who are your donors? Why do they or would they want to give? What property makes the most sense for them to consider? When should the gift be made, and how should the gift best be structured? So it's finding the donor that has the intent and the motive that you can accomplish in the right direction. So what we're showing here is the types of donors that are out there. They're either grizzly bears or teddy bears. And these don't have to be donors. In our own lives, we know people who are like this. But what I'm showing here is every situation here has a donor behind it. Somebody's suspicious, so they don't give anything. I don't trust anybody. There are those that just need extra care before you can take them across the line. There's those that just give to everybody, and nobody benefits from that. There are those that want to give. They just need to be shown how to be developed. These are the most important potential donors that are out there. How about those that know what they should do, but they're paralyzed? You know, that's the same today when you have the stock market. We have a stock market that everybody hates, and everybody is either paralyzed or paranoid. They don't do anything. We got to get donors over that. And finally, the last one up here is probably the most important. Nobody ever asked me. Who wants to ask somebody and be told no? Nobody. You got to ask the question. That's the whole key. So some samples of hidden questions that your donor prospect has in his or her mind. What's your organization's principal mission? How sound is the organization? What's the credentials? Will my money be put to good use? Who's going to watch it? Who's going to manage it? Who's on the board of directors? Et cetera, et cetera. You will know all of those answers, but your donor doesn't. You've got to ask the questions that the donor has in his or her mind, because if you just talk, you're going to miss the most important things that are really the considerations of the donor. So there's a direct, go right past the most important thing. How will my gift affect my family situation? You don't know, but when you're asking for money, you got to also, your donor is thinking, okay, if I do this, how will it affect my children? How will it affect my grandchildren? How will it affect my spouse? Those are questions that you need to bring up. So development professionals really don't think in terms of plan giving, major gift giving. Your donor doesn't think in those terms. You have to understand your donor's personal family situation and taxes, how they will relate to that. Taxes become very important. They can play an interesting role, and they can get you beyond standard checkbook giving. So today we're in a perfect storm. It's not business as usual anymore. We're in a perfect storm. That'll be the next one. Tori is our choreographer here, by the way, and she does an excellent job. Here's where we're at today. Top rate, 39.6%. Expectations that income taxes will increase. Asset values today are at all-time highs. Interest rates are at all-time lows. Clients are looking for more income. They're doing anything. How do I increase my income from the 0.0001 that I'm making someplace else? The population is aging that have the assets. And I put up here state tax unified credit as a known quantity, but as I said earlier, I don't know if that's the case, and neither is anybody in this room. With all the political jabbering that's going on, who knows what it's going to be. So everything, it's a moving target. So what do you consider that you might perhaps give? Well, one of the key things, you can move it ahead, Tori, I'm going to watch my time. One of the other key considerations, as I said, the people who have the money today are the ones that are also a little bit older. And when I say older, I used to say somebody 45 was old, and then down the road I used to say somebody's 55 was old, and now I'm up to saying somebody that is 90 that's old. And so the key here is what is on their mind. It's, I don't want to run out of money. It's not so much thinking about what I can make in the stock market, not so much thinking about anything else, but how do I keep my family together, and I don't want to run out of money. The other issue that's out there is many donors have a vacation home. As they get older, they might find that vacation home, which is someplace else, they're going to move to it. So you have to capture them. Stock transfers. Do you have any? It's how you word the question to the donor. Do you have appreciated assets at risk in the market? Would you like to reduce some of that risk? Would you like to liquidate some of your appreciated assets and not have to pay any capital gains tax, et cetera, et cetera? It's how you ask the question. Fact-finding is really what it is. Same thing for real estate transfers. I know Kameron's going to talk a little bit about some of that. Also takes place with business transfers. Annuity transfers. If you don't think that the entire population in the United States doesn't own annuities, you're wrong. I used to think a long time ago that, gee, somebody that was wealthy, they wouldn't own annuities. No, I will tell you. You make a mistake if you're thinking in yourself that they don't own annuities. They do. And they also own life insurance. Annuity transfers. Do you think you will access the income from your annuities? Most of them, no. They have the annuities. All that money has been growing in their tax deferred. Why do I want to take money out of it? Because I only have to pay taxes on it when I take it out, and I really don't need the money. Are you concerned about passing tax consequences over to your heirs? I haven't really thought about that. Would you like to create a structured inheritance for your heirs instead of giving them a lump sum? Now think about what I just said there. We're seeing today on life insurance It used to be when you're younger, yep, I want $1 million term policy. And you get a little bit older, you say, no, I want to make sure that I have some life insurance that I'll have over my entire lifetime. Then the question is, well, wait a minute. Do I want somebody to receive $1 million at one time? Because I've had the chance over the last 35 years to see how my children react, et cetera, et cetera. So we're seeing more and more life insurance policies structured for a payout over 5, 10, and 15 years. It's really interesting how all the considerations are changing. But it's the same concept as it relates to annuities, and I'm going to give you some ideas there. So the question is always, if I can show you a way to give your favorite charity, money to your favorite charity, without any out-of-pocket costs, while improving your personal situation, would you be willing to spend a few minutes to learn how to do it? Remember this, it's all about what you needed to know, that you didn't know you needed to know, that you don't want to find out too late you needed to know it. Everybody agree with that statement? That's the whole key that you want to get involved with. So I'm going to give you some specific ideas now relating to all of these things. Transformational charitable giving. Charitable gift annuity. Ruth is a 74-year-old widow. Her intention is to give $100,000 to charity, but she's been hoping to receive some income before donating the money. And with interest rates so low, she hasn't even had enough money to pay for her bingo or to go to the casino, I guess. So here's an idea that will put money into the charity's pocket using a charitable gift annuity. Ruth gives $100,000 to charity, and she gives it to the charity in the form of a charitable gift annuity. As she gives money to that charity, that charitable gift annuity then will pay Ruth. There's a table that's developed based upon age and what you give. But in our example that I'm showing here, Ruth gives $100,000. She receives $5,000 a year for life. At Ruth's death, the charity receives the balance of what's in that account. So what we've accomplished here, we've had Ruth, who has been making nothing on that $100,000, but does have charitable intent. We give the $100,000 to the charity, we create a charitable gift annuity, pays Ruth $5,000 a year that she didn't have before. She could use that money to buy a life insurance policy, she could use that money to buy a long-term care policy, she can use the money to spend it. She didn't have it before. And because she made a charitable contribution, in the early years she has a tax deduction available to her, so the first number of years of that $5,000 are totally tax-free. So this will provide some money to the charity at Ruth's death. But a lot of times a charity has to keep that, well, not a lot of times, a charity has to keep the money in their account, and they can do what's called self-insure. They'll have the money managed, and they pay out the money to Ruth and hope that they've managed well enough that there's something left. But here's an idea that will put money in the charity's pocket immediately. Same situation. Ruth gives $100,000, receives $5,000 a year. Nothing's changed from there. But rather than self-insure, what the charity says, well, wait a minute. I can take and go to a AAA insurance company. I can give them $63,000. That insurance company will guarantee the $5,000 a year to Ruth. That leaves $37,000 instantaneously available to the charity. You don't have to wait until Ruth's death. You got $37,000 in your pocket right now that you can use, save, develop, etc. So here's an idea that puts money in your pocket right now, into the charitable pocket. Insurance in charitable giving is really key for in particular, the ongoing feasibility of the existence of the charity. I don't want to say I'm fortunate, but I have had $3 million life insurance policies that have come in, that I have sold, that have come into charities. $1 million came in one time. Nobody knows when they're going to come in. We had 2 of them come in early. It's unbelievable what was happening. But here's what you can do with a life insurance policy. You can name the charity as a primary beneficiary, have a life insurance policy, name the charity as beneficiary. You can name a charity as contingent beneficiary. You can name a charity as part of the beneficiary. Or you can give your policy to charity. I'm going to talk to you, give you 2 ideas here. These are particularly for us in this room and the development officers. I had a physician. This is called $1 million versus $15,000 equals 0. I had a physician client that said, I want to give $1 million life insurance policy to Duke. I really like Duke, and I'm enamored, and I'm very grateful to them. So we put some numbers together, and he said, would you come with me when I go talk to the development people at Duke? This was 16, 17 years ago, and back then the stock market was bubbling. I said, sure, I'll go with you. So we go to Duke, and we're met with 2 of the development. But these weren't development people. These were the people who were managing the money. And they all had the cufflinks on and the shiny shoes and so forth. So we go there, and what they said was, my client was giving $1 million life insurance policy, and he said, what are you paying for the premium for that? $15,000. Wait a minute. Why don't you just give us the $15,000, and we'll show you how we can manage that $15,000 and look what we can create over the next 20 and 30 years. My client walked out. In your donor's mind, in his mind, he was given $1 million. He was reduced to $15,000. So you have to be careful of what your donor's thinking is versus what you think he or she's thinking. In this case, nothing happened at all. Here's an interesting one. Life insurance policies sold. Anything sold over the past 17 years, between 17 years past, they're all in great difficulty. They're in great difficulty for 2 reasons. One, the illustration back then that was used when a life insurance policy was put together, yeah, you can make 8% a year on the policy, you can make 9% a year, whatever it was crazy numbers. So there's 2 things that come into play when you have a life insurance policy, when you develop a premium. It's what can you make on the policy, what's in the cash, and number 2, what's the cost of insurance each year? Nobody ever talked about the cost of insurance. Well, insurance companies over the last 8 years are making the same thing you and I are making, 0.000, just about nothing. So they haven't made anything on the reserves that they're supposed to have for that policy. And the illustrations that were used in the first place, 8, 9%, I'm sorry, they're down to 2, 1. And you know what? Nobody pays attention. They buy a policy, it's gone, they get something in the mail, they don't really understand what they have, years go by, and all of a sudden they get a notice, you know, all of a sudden you have to put in a whole lot of money or the policy's going to lapse. Well, I had a client, same situation. He had a $500,000 policy, and he says, I don't want this thing. I have to pay a huge premium if I want to keep this policy. I don't want it anymore. He had $42,000 of cash value in the policy. And I knew he had some charitable intent. And what I'm talking about here, you can repeat and repeat and repeat all over it. You have some charitable intent? Yes, I do. I said, okay. You got a couple of choices. First choice is you can take your policy and donate it to the charity. You donate it to the charity, you got $42,000. You got a tax deduction for the $42,000. Okay, I don't need the money, I'll do that. And I said to him, would you like to see if there's a way that you can substantially increase what you give to this charity? Yeah, I guess. I says, okay. I said, so we went to the charity, and I said, I don't want you to do much talking. Let me do the talking. Here's what we did. We posed to their board. You have a $500,000 policy. We reduced the face amount of that policy to $250,000. Face amount. Took the $42,000 as the initial cash value that we transferred, And the charity, by making a premium payment, now we've reduced the premium considerably, over the lifetime, and we used 100 as the lifetime, it represented a 14% compounded rate of return to the charity. And I can tell you today, charities are not making 14% compound because they have the same considerations that we do. I can't take a risk. I can't wake up and have a 20% loss sometimes. So we substantially took what would have been a $42,000 contribution and turned it into $250,000. How about for those that are uninsurable? In group life insurance that is put together, it's developed. You have so many people in your organization, and we're going to give $50,000 to the owners and managers and $25,000 to the middle managers and $10,000 to everybody else. It's a guaranteed issue. If I had a client that's uninsurable, I simply increase the amount of life insurance that we provide to everybody in those classes. And because I've increased the overall amount of life insurance, I just increase the amount that my uninsurable client now has. Once you have more than $50,000 of group life insurance as an economic benefit, there's a tax involved in that. If you name a charity, there's no economic benefit to you, it's to the charity, so you don't incur any tax. So I can create $100,000, $200,000 for somebody that's uninsurable simply by increasing the amount of group life insurance for everybody in their class. And group life insurance, by the way, is totally deductible by the company. So what if I have somebody that's uninsurable, and I say to them, which I've had, I says, I'm going to give a $100,000 policy. And I said, if I can show you a way to take what you would have done and turn it into maybe $1 million over a number of years, you want to spend a few minutes to learn how to do it? Okay. We took the premium that he was going to pay, and we simply used that premium and we insured 2 key people within that charitable organization that he was wanting to favor. And we said, going forward, when the death benefit comes in from the first one, we're going to buy more life insurance on other key people to that charitable organization. And we're going to do that, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do that. And over time, we've created $1 million simply from somebody who just gave up the premium on what was going to be a $100,000 policy. You have to open up your clients' minds as what the possibilities might be. This is a real interesting one here. How many attorneys here have talked to their clients with regards to the charitable remainder rollover of $100,000? Very few. You can take $100,000 of your IRA and roll it directly over to a charity. No tax consequences. Who wants to ask somebody? I've had two. You got to ask, give me $100,000. Very difficult to do. However, for those of you who are 70 and a half, or those of you who will be 70 and a half, each year you have to take money out of your IRA in what's called a retired RMD, required minimum distribution. We have clients that have to take out these distributions, $3,000, $5,000, $7,000. You know the first question? I hate to take this money out. Why do I have to? Because you're required to. Yeah, but I got to pay taxes on it. Well, that's how the IRS is going to get their money from you. Well, what do I do with it? You have a charity in mind? Yes, I do. We'll take the $5,000 or the $7,000 that you would have been forced to take, and we'll move that right over to the charity. So instead of looking for somebody that will give you $100,000, you find 10 or 20 people that give up $5,000. They're not really even giving up $5,000, because if they took the $5,000, had to pay taxes on it, maybe they got $3,500 left in their pocket after taxes. So you find 10 people or 20 people. Once you've got them for the first year, you've got them for every single year afterwards. So you can take $5,000 and turn it over time into $1 million. It's not difficult, and it's much easier to go to somebody and say, how about that $5,000 that you're forced to take out? How am I doing time-wise, Cameron? Okay. Here's a triple win. Dave is 60 years old and wants to maximize contributions to his charity and his family. He's got $200,000 in his IRA. So here's what we did. We took the $200,000 that was in his IRA and we accepted it as cash. We took it out and paid taxes on it. Who would do such a thing? Well, here's what happened. We took $200,000 out and we would have paid taxes. Assuming a 25% tax bracket, we'd owe $50,000 in taxes. We took the $200,000 that we just got out and gave it to his charity. We got a tax deduction for giving that money, not for the full $200,000, but we got a tax deduction that helped offset the tax that he would have had to pay because he pulled the $200,000 out. But we established what's known as a charitable remainder annuity trust. So now the charity's paying him $10,000 a year out of that trust, 5%. Took the $10,000 that he was getting, put it into a life insurance policy worth $500,000. At Dave's death, his family is going to receive $500,000 totally income tax free, and the charity received $200,000. We just created $700,000. And how did we do it? A little tax up front. It's how you position ideas in your client's mind. Same thing for an annuity. Annuities have a lot of embedded tax liabilities to them. Joe's 70 years old, has an older annuity worth $500,000, has a basis of $350,000. Two concerns. He wants to reduce his current income taxes, leverage his money for his family. Isn't that every one of our concerns? Took the $500,000 and we transferred it to a special annuity. It's not a special annuity. It's an annuity that pays him over time. It's called an immediate annuity. He gets the money, but of the money he receives, $25,000, only $15,000 of it is taxable. So he receives $25,000, only pays taxes on 15 of it, has then the opportunity to donate that $25,000, that $25,000 in his hand, donates it to his favorite charity year after year after year. So if he does it for over 15 years, that's close to $400,000 that he's donated to his charity. He now takes the tax savings that he has and he says, well, wait a minute, I still want to do something for my family. I don't really need the money, so he takes it and purchases a life insurance policy. The value of life insurance policies today also have a long-term care benefit to them. So if you don't use the death benefit, but you have the need for long-term care expenses, you can reduce the death benefit to pay for it. So it's a double edge. And if you never needed it, you got the cash in the policy. If you never need the cash, ultimately you got a tax-free death benefit. Perfect situation. You just have to talk to somebody. You have to show them the ideas. Mary's a 65-year-old. She has $500,000, of which she says, you know what, half of this is going to go to my family. I want half of it to go to my family, half of it to go to a charity, but I don't know what I want to do right now. I want to still have some control of something. So what did we do? We took $100,000 of that and we put it into a life insurance policy, one-time contribution, created $250,000. Half the money goes to her family, income tax-free, as a death benefit. We took the $400,000 that she had, put it into an annuity, paying her $18,000 a year, of which only $3,000 was subject to income taxes. So she got $18,000 a year. She could give the $18,000 a year to charity every year. She could get part of it to charity. She can do whatever she wants. She got $18,000 that she didn't have before. She wants to really create what she's doing to the charity. She gives them the $18,000 a year, takes a tax deduction, gives her a little extra spending money. At her death, if she lives for 20 years, think of the amount of money that the charity received each year, and the charity receives the remaining balance at her death. I wish I could give you more. Here's Don. He's got some money sitting in his IRA, $200,000. There's many IRAs out there that have $1 million in it, $1.5 million. I got $200,000 I wanted to go to charity. I said to him, Don, you want to really increase what you're doing for charity? He says, yeah. He says, okay. We took the $200,000, we made a $100,000 contribution the first year, $100,000 contribution the second year. Remember I said you could take it right out of the IRA, transfer it right over to the charity. The charity, then we used the money and we bought a $500,000 life insurance policy. That life insurance policy payable to the charity. So we took $200,000 moved it over and created $500,000 with it. The other benefit that that created for Don was we took $200,000 out of his IRA, so there's less money that he had in there, so his required minimum distribution was also less each year. $3 million driver's license. There's 3 phases of retirement. The first phase is what we call the most active phase. And so you don't have to go to work anymore. You got a lot of interests that you want to pursue. And we call it sort of a second childhood without any parental supervision. So you have a good time, spend a lot of money. It's called the go-go phase. The go-go phase then moves into the slow-go phase. And this is the phase where people are tired of running through airports. It's hard for them to spend any money anymore. I mean, what am I going to spend it on? They're a little bit older, a little bit more tired. And that's when they say to themselves, you know, I've been blessed. How did I ever get what I got? I've been really, really fortunate. You know, why is everybody yelling at each other? I want my family to love each other. What's going on in the world? The world should be a better place. What can I do to make it better? Because I appreciate where I was. The third phase is called the no-go phase. At this point in time, you're not thinking about anything other than health issues for yourself and your family, and everything else is taken a sidestep. So if you don't catch your donor in the second phase, you're not going to catch the donor in the third phase. $3 million life insurance, or $3 million driver's license. I had a client in Florida going to buy a $3 million policy, and the reason he was going to buy it was going to go inside an irrevocable trust. So at his death, $3 million would be in there to pay the federal estate taxes, so he'd be able to transfer everything he had over to his family. Everything just perfect. But he had to go through what they call underwriting. Got to show that you have the physical ability to be able to buy the policy. We got partway through it, and what do you think he received in the mail? He got a notice that he had to retake his driver's test. And I will tell you, everything stopped. He could have cared less about a $3 million that would go to the irrevocable trust to pay the federal estate taxes. All he did was think about, am I going to be able to pass this driver's test? Because that meant if I don't, I have lost my independence. Bottom line, nothing ever happened. It just went away. It was a $3 million driver's test that he failed and never bought the insurance. Last idea. This is so simple here. How to maximize a charitable gift. Jack and Betty are living comfortably off their Social Security required minimum distributions. They really don't have any expenses. And they want to give money to their favorite charity. But they file an easy form. They don't get any tax deductions. So what do? I'm going to give $14,000. That's how much I want to give. Take the $14,000 and give it to their daughter. Their daughter then takes the $14,000 and gives it to their parents' favorite charity. So I got $14,000. That's where I wanted to get in there. But the daughter was in a 35% tax bracket. The daughter got a $4,900 tax deduction for having given the $14,000 to the charity. The $4,900 the daughter took and gave it to the charity. We just turned $14,000 into $18,900, just like that. There's a lot of clients out there. You don't have to look for ones that have $1 million and $2 million. You just have to look for somebody that's filing an EZ form that they don't get a tax break for giving to charity. There it is. There's a substantial increase. That's all. One quick second. Remember I said about that tax, that $125,000 tax that I showed up there? One of the problems, I'm sure some of you in the audience are on boards of nonprofits. So I have a client that the board just wasn't doing anything, nothing. And I said, okay, we got to do something to spur some activity. Either we spur activity or you need a different board, one of the two. So here's what we did. I put together a check payable to that charity for $100,000. There were 11 people on the board. We had a meeting. I put a check down payable to the nonprofit in front of everybody down. They didn't know what was there. And we start talking about the importance of board giving. The importance, because if the board gives, you can spur the continued giving from donors. So then I asked everybody to turn over what I put in front of them, which was a check for $100,000 going to the charity. I said, I want everybody who's not interested in doing this to move that forward. And it's exactly what I did. I shut up. And you know what? 4 people moved it forward. And it's not really given $100,000 because it was a life insurance policy. Perhaps it was maybe $2,500 or $2,800 a year of premium. That's deductible, by the way. But you got to create things in your donor's mind or in your minds, and the attorney needs to create things in the client's minds. Not so much book learning. It's creative ideas that make sense today with what people own. And if you can do that, if I can show you an idea that can turn money to your charity that won't cost you anything but improve your family situation at the same time, you want to spend a few minutes to learn how to do it, I hope I've given you some of those thoughts that allow you to take and move that forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. You left me 3 minutes. But I can do it. I've got an hour's worth of material to do in 3 minutes. All right, I will take an hour now, thank you. No, seriously. My material is under tab 1 in the book. I want to get back to some book learning here for just a minute, because this is important. When you have a client or yourself are considering making a charitable gift, it can only be to recognized charities that have tax-exempt status. So my opinion is if you're having someone or yourself making a plan to make a substantial contribution, it'd be a good idea to request the charity's tax-exempt status letter, just to be sure you're going to get the deduction that you think you're going to get. Under current gifts for cash, also we have to remember cash gifts get a deduction up to 50% of adjusted gross income. Anything in excess of that can be deducted over the next 5 years. Then I have a thing on matching gifts. You can just read that. Let's go down to appreciated property. Capital assets versus tangible personal property. Capital assets defined in the code under section 1221, and you have to hold it as the donor for a year and 1 day before making the gift in order to create or to avoid the income tax issues that are bad if you're giving away short-term assets. So what you're trying to do is to avoid the capital gains tax if the asset was sold. So you get the deduction for the full value. You have appreciated stock, as Jeff was talking about. You get a deduction for the full value, but now it's limited to 30%. So remember, cash contributions, 50%. Capital assets, it's 30%, but you still get the same 5-year carryover. Now, with tangible personal property, over on page 2, it's a little bit different. You have to be wary of this. A deduction is only limited to tax basis only, unless the charity can use the tangible piece of personal property for its corporate purposes. I was involved in one of these several years ago, where I had a charity that a donor wanted to give a truck. It was a used pickup truck. Had a Cummins engine in it. I think the Cummins engines was built in Jamestown, and the long story on the truck was the engine far outlived the body of the truck. But what we did is the charity got a appraisal of the truck. The donor gave the truck to the charity. The charity used the truck for its corporate purposes, so the donor got the deduction for the full value instead of just the tax basis. All right, number 4 is depreciated property. Here's an opportunity for a donor that if the property has depreciated in value and still wants to give it away, then the watchword should be sell the asset first, take the tax loss on the tax return, and then give away the money and take a second contribution as a cash contribution to the charity. Number 5 is real estate. Jeff already mentioned, a donor can give away real estate, and this can be a very simple thing to do, is just give away the real estate, maybe retain the life use for the donor's spouse, or maybe some other people. You get a tax deduction immediately for the remainder interest, but you still get to use the asset for the rest of your life. And then maybe later on, you don't want it anymore, you give away the life use interest to the charity and take a second deduction. Number 6, in closely held stock, I wanted to talk a little bit about this because it has some particularly interesting problems that go along with it. Plus, in my experience, the largest donations of capital assets have been closely held stock by stockholders. So if a stock is in a closely held company, how do we value it? Do we need an appraisal? And I think yes, you do. If it's a substantial deduction, you want to be able to substantiate the value of the stock, and you can't do it because it's not traded on the open market. So you're going to have to hire an appraiser to get a value on it. But what if the stock shares are subject to some limitations, either bylaw restrictions or buy-sell agreements, so that the donor can't just simply give it away? We may have to amend some corporate documents or some buy-sell agreements to allow a donor to be able to give that stock away. A case example I have at the bottom of the page is a deal I was involved with last year. We had a stockholder that had a few shares of stock. He paid practically nothing for it, and it had appreciated like wild. So the capital appreciation was absolutely astronomical in relation to the cost basis, and he wanted to give that stock to his favorite charity. And the problem was we have a bylaws restriction in this company, and the company is a closed corporation, but it's not a family corporation. There are about 100 shareholders in there, so it's treated more like a real going concern than just a family getting together and deciding what they're going to do. So in this case, everybody agreed that it was a good deal to give the stock to the charity. The corporate board wanted the charity to have the money, but on the other hand, the corporate board's very conservative and didn't want a charity as a shareholder because it violated the bylaws. So what we did to satisfy the situation is we entered into an agreement with the charity that if the charity, by chance, happenstance, whatever, should ever have stock in this corporation for 1 year, it would agree to sell the stock to the back to the corporation for X dollars a share. And just by happenstance, I'm sure pure coincidence, they received 2 shares of this company's stock about 30 days later, and that triggered the agreement. The company bought the stock back from the charity. Everybody walked away happy. So there's some things with closely held stock that you have to pay attention to and make sure that we're going to be able to accomplish the goal that the donor wants to accomplish. Over on page 3, we have deferred gifts, donor-directed funds. That's a really neat way to give money to a charity because you can have some control over it. You fund like with the community foundation, you give it a ton of money and then it's an endowment, and then each year you tell the community foundation where you would like the money spread around to other beneficiaries. So the donor gets the tax deduction immediately, but also is involved in dispersing the money for years to come. And then we have charitable remainder trust. Jeff was talking about those. I just have some technical information here on those. There's charitable remainder annuity trust, CRATs, and then there's CRUTs, which is can't think of the word now, right? Anyway, at the bottom of the page, charitable lead annuity trust. Now this is another animal. It's just a flip side of the remainder trust. The charity gets the benefit on the front end, and the family gets the money back on the back end. Be careful because the downside of these trusts are taxable, where the others are not. Now let's go over to the last page on retirement accounts. Jeff showed us some really interesting ways to leverage retirement accounts into something bigger and better. What I'm going to talk about is just some more basic elements of giving retirement accounts, because this is a great source of funds to help charities and save taxes for the family. The idea here is let's look for taxable retirement money to give to charities and leave the non-taxable money to the family. I was involved with a client about a couple of years ago, had just short of $2 million, $500,000 in an IRA, and the rest of it in assorted other things. The estate plan in her will said that she left 4 charities $100,000 each, and then the rest to the family. The beneficiaries of her IRA were her family, her children. And I did the math and suggested to her that she have the 4 charities named as beneficiaries under her IRA at $100,000 each, and then take that gift out of the will. The net effect of that was for her family, not necessarily for her, but for her family it meant $100,000 in income tax savings just because of the tax brackets that the kids were in. So how do you do this? And number 2, do you name the charity as just one of the many listed beneficiaries? Or do you have a separate retirement account just for the charity? That is the fail-safe method to do. You can't go wrong doing that. However, that does require breaking up the money, creating a new account, and having just the charity listed on there. The donors might not want to make their lives more complicated by doing that. So number 4 is how can we name, or can we name a charity with human beings? By doing that, does that destroy the designated beneficiary designation under the Internal Revenue Code? And the answer is yes, it does. You cannot name charities and human beings and have a designated beneficiary under the code. All right, the downside of that is that means the benefits in the IRA are taxable over a 5-year period rather than being stretched out by humans. So we can cure these, though. One cure would be to pay out the charity first thing after the decedent dies. The custodian doesn't have to determine who the beneficiaries are until September 30 of the year after the decedent dies. How that got in the code, I'm not really sure. But imagine somebody died January 1, 2016 with an IRA with beneficiary designations. You don't know who the beneficiaries are, or you don't have to disclose who the beneficiaries are and get the money out to them until September 30 of 2017. That's a long time. So here the cure is, if we have a charity named with human beings, pay the charity out first. Then you have just human beings, and then the balance of the account can be split up. Another cure is to give a charity the fixed dollar amount, a pecuniary amount. And then again, the account can just be split up. The pecuniary amount goes to the charity and it's cashed out. The remainder goes to the human beings, presumably to be rolled over into an inherited IRA and stretched out for their lives. Finally, when planning with charities and retirement accounts, beneficiary designations, it is always advisable to check with the administrator or custodian to see that it will accommodate what you're going to have for a beneficiary designation. There is absolutely no standard in the industry as to what a custodian will accept or can accept as a beneficiary designation. I've had a lot of experience working with a lot of different companies, and I can just tell you there just is no standard at all. You need to talk with the company first to make sure that what the plan is going to be accepted by the company. My better experience is working with brokerage houses. They're willing to have much more sophisticated beneficiary designations. If you're dealing directly with the investment company like Vanguard or Fidelity, you have less options. So that's 5 minutes of some nuts and bolts, and thank you for your attendance. Randy?
I want to thank these 2 gentlemen. Excellent presentation. Just a note, in Jeff's presentation, he mentioned charitable gift annuities, and the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation, we do administer those for our local charities, and they are regulated by the Department of Insurance. So if you'd like to talk more about that, I'd be glad to talk to you more about that offline.